So to start with, in example 1, they give you two fractions being added together. You guys should be on page 298. So x divided by 7 added to, again, x, but divided by 3 is equivalent to 10. Now, if you recall, when you're dealing with fractional coefficients, in other words, the variable is involved in a fraction, okay? This is like saying 1/7 times x. This is like saying 1/3 times x, which is why it is called a fractional coefficient. In any case, the easiest way to solve these is to find the lowest common denominator of the denominators, obviously. And what we learned a couple chapters ago, I believe it was, is if you are looking for the lowest common denominator, you find the least common multiple. Some of them are obvious. This one, you know it's 21, right? If you were adding fractions with denominators of 7 and 3, you would make it 21. So, to solve, step 1, we are going to multiply each piece of the puzzle. That's this piece, and that piece by lowest common denominator. Okay? Now, in doing so, recognize that throwing a 1 under it for these fractions makes this look like x over 7 times 21 over 1. X over 7 times 21. I'm just going to write it over here so you can see it. Oh, look, the 7 and the 21 are both divisible by 7. This becomes a 1. This becomes a 3. Okay? So because of this, x times 3 is 3x. Is there anybody that's lost at this point? Are you guys okay over here? Sorry, I keep twisting back and forth. All right. This piece here is x over 3 times 21 over 1. Again, I'm just blowing it up so you can see it real clearly. The 3 and the 21 are both divisible by 3. Therefore, 1 times 1 is the denominator. Denominator's gone now. 7 times x, oh look, 7x. 10 times 21, I don't think I need to clarify that too much. Okay, so this was this piece, and that was that piece. Can you guys solve it from there? Oh, absolutely you could. You would say 10x is 210. You would divide by 10 and say x is 21. Incidentally, you could test yourself by saying 21 divided by 7 added to 21 divided by 3. Is it 10? Well, let's check. 21 divided by 7 is 3. 21 divided by 3 is 7. Is it 10? Absolutely. Okay? That's example A. This is the entire lesson, folks. They only get a little bit tougher. You simply have to take it slow, use the steps, over and over we go. Does it work in a subtraction problem? Certainly it does. Again, we're dealing with subtracting fractions. Go back in time when you learned how to subtract fractions. It was all about the denominator. That's all it was about. So let's do this one. 3a over 5 minus, or negative, a over 2 is equal to 1 over 20. Oh, look, now we have 3 fractions. Lowest common denominator of 5, 2, and 20. What do you think it is? Yep. You bet. And if you didn't recognize that, you could prime factor each one and take the largest power of anything showing. Okay? To prime factor, or to find the lowest common denominator, prime factor each item and take the largest power of any factor that exists. We know it's 20 though, and that's awesome. So we're going to multiply both pieces by 20 over 1. This is a negative, don't forget that. 20 over 1, 20 over 1. Okay, 5 and 20 reduced by a factor of 5. 5 becomes a 1. What does the 20 become? 4. 4 times 3a is 12a. Ooh, don't listen to my stomach. A over 2 times 20 over 1. Cross canceling, 2 and 20 reduced by a factor of 2. 2 becomes a 1, 20 becomes a 10. 10 times negative A is negative 10A. How do you like this? A thing multiplied by its reciprocal is 1, right? If you didn't recognize that, cross cancel your 20s, and in any case, you'll still come up with a 1. Okay? So 2A is 1, right? 12A minus 10A. What will A be? Divide both pieces by 2, and you end up with your answer. If you want to plug it in, check. Great, but we're going to move on. So, 2 examples. Seth, I know this is tough. Hang in there. All right, let's move on. Example 2. Nothing has changed here except for the fact that they might have gotten a little bit bigger. And you guys already did situations like this in the previous lesson when you cross-multiplied your proportions. Okay, we're still using all that same stuff. Let's do it. X over 3 minus x plus 2 over 5 equals 2 over 1 for fun. Lowest common denominator of 3 and 5? 15. 15 over 1. 15 over 1. 15 over 1. Usually I leave myself more space, but I'm just forgetting to do it. 3 and 5, or 3 and 15. So we got 5x, right? Okay, this piece might be a little tricky, so I'm going to kind of break it down a little bit. 5 and 15 reduced by a factor of 5. And now what we have, I just want you to see it, is negative 3x plus 2. Notice how this negative, I'm inserting it in front of the 3. That way I do not forget that that negative affects both those pieces. Okay, don't ever forget that. In a subtraction problem, when you have a polynomial, that means minus x and minus 2. By inserting that, by leaving that right in front of the 3, that will help me to remember that this affects both pieces. And nothing reduces over here, so you end up with a 30. Okay? Some of you might see this right off the bat and not show this. That's okay. Just make sure you're doing it right. Today, I know you're doing evens, but if you want to check a few before you go, we can do that as well. All right, this is our last samples anyway, and then I'm going to do just a few out of the assignment. So 5x minus 3x minus 6. You guys see this? Negative 3 times x is negative 3x. Negative 3 times negative 2 is a negative 6. From here, it's simple. Add 6, divide by 2. Notice how I shorthanded that, but you knew what I did because you've already done it 1,000 times. B, it's bigger, it's badder, it's uglier, but we will do the exact same thing. Any questions on this one? I'm sorry. You guys okay over here? Okay. B, 2n, and I'm going to put a 1 under it, plus n over 3 equals n over 4 plus 5 over 1. I left a little bit of space in front of each item because I know I'm going to have to multiply by the lowest common denominator, which is what? Anybody know what the lowest common denominator of 3 and 4 is? 12. 12, bravo. So finally I remembered to leave myself some space. So each piece is getting multiplied by the lowest common denominator. In the first spot, nothing reduces, unfortunately. 24n it is. Positive. 12 and 3 reduces 4. And we're just going to leave it 4n. Awesome. reduces 3n, nothing. Okay? From here, I think you guys can probably make it work, but I'm going to go ahead and throw it together for you. 28n equals 3n plus 60. What should I do with those n's? They're on both sides of the fence. Subtract the 3n over, right? It's always easier to keep your coefficients positive if possible. So if I subtract 3n from both sides, I now have 25n equaling 60. Okay? And if I divide by the coefficient of n to solve for 1n, I get n equals 60 over 25, which, if you notice, they already reduced it for us. This is what you're going to want to give me. Okay, this is not reduced, this is. So I want simplified form, just like they're showing you. Let's jump into the deep end of the pool, shall we? Yeah, I don't care. Let's jump into the deep end of the pool real quick. On page 299, there is something called a sample. It's squeezed in below, right? Now, you guys are going to think this is super weird, but I want to walk you through it, and I want to do some samples, because this sample is going to help you with everything from 19 on. Okay, so we've got to practice this. So I'm going to do the sample with you, and I'll do a couple other ones. So here's the sample. 1/4 of n plus 2 minus 1/6 of n plus 2, n minus 2 equals 3/2. Now, up to this point, you might have said, well, let's distribute the 1/4, da-da-da-da-da-da, and let's figure it out from there. Well, because we have the lowest common denominator now, and we can use that knowledge, we can clear the fractions. 6, 4, and 2, what we got? 12? This is where you're going to think this is super bizarre, okay? I'm going to try and do my best to show it as clearly as I can. And I'm breaking it up. They don't. This is a negative. I'm just going to squeeze my 12 over 1 in there. 12 over 1. Okay, you're thinking to yourself, this has to be distributed over all three pieces, right, Mrs. Myers? Actually, no. It only has to be distributed over this piece.
Rachel, you have to be honest with it, Rachel.
Because once you have this, then the resulting product gets distributed over the parentheses. It looks like this. 12 and 4 becomes a 3, right? So now I have 3 times n plus 2, and that is where the multiplication then gets distributed into the parentheses. It's just simpler. Okay, if you try to multiply it by this and by this and by this, then you're going to be multiplying it by 12 and 12 again. Okay, so distribute it in one time over the item preceding the parentheses, and then in the next step, that effect gets distributed here. Okay?
John, go to the office, please, John.
So now I have a negative 2 because of this multiplication being distributed over n minus 2. Okay? This part's easy. Okay. Questions so far, guys? This is going to take practice and patience. Distributing 3n plus 6, negative 2n plus 4. Okay. Combining like terms, that's n. Yep.
Plus 1. Subtract.
8 should be the result. Okay. Let's do another one, folks. And I don't care how big, how bad, and how ugly they are, it's all doable. I'm going to do number 25. Okay, so if you want to look at what I'm doing, it's on page 300. This is number 25. Sorry, Connor. 1/4 of y minus a third minus 1/6 of y minus 3 is 2/3. Okay, all kinds of fractions. Okay, lowest common denominator is 12 again. So 12 over 1, 12 over 1, 12 over 1. Okay, all you need to do is distribute this over the fraction that it precedes. Okay, because once you've done that, the combined product will then be multiplied by the parentheses. 4 and 12, I know this is a long one. 3, y minus 1/3. Negative 2, y minus 3. 8? Okay, now we can distribute over both pieces. 3 times y is? 3 times negative third?
Minus 1.
Bravo. An item times its reciprocal is 1. Bravo. Can we do the work from here?
Yep.
Easy peasy. This is the difficult part. And if you do not use these steps, you're going to have a page-long mess, and you're not going to even know where to start. It's so hard if you don't use the steps. Okay? So you have y
Minus 8. Minus 5, my bad.
plus 5.
Oh, plus 5.
Because a negative 1 and a positive 6.
Yep. I did the exact.
No worries. We have 3, if I did my arithmetic right? Yes. That's number 25. Okay, before you start the assignment,